Since Assassin's Creed Shadows isn't coming out until February, I figured why not go back and see if Mirage was as mid as I thought it was last year. So of course I went back and played Assassin's Creed Mirage because I really couldn't find anything to play at that time. So let's go over and review this game with a somewhat fresh mindset. Go over gameplay, some story and kinda characters, and world to see where this game lands for me out of 10. Sound good? Cool. Remember, this is all just my opinion. Of course, yours is probably going to be different, and if it is different, that's cool. I'd love to read your opinion in the comments below. And while you're down there, consider liking and subscribing to see more of what I've done and what's to come. I got a couple Assassin's Creed things, I got Life is Strange stuff, if you like that, ranking videos, all that good stuff, so take a look. But either way, with all that being said, let's take a look at Assassin's Creed Mirage 1 year later. So to start, we all know, or most of us know, that Assassin's Creed Mirage was originally just going to be a DLC made for Valhalla, and it was so good apparently it became its own short little game, I guess, which is why Ubisoft, knowing that it was a DLC, graciously made this game $10 cheaper, or something like that. Cheaper than a brand new title. I use that word graciously loosely, by the way, you know that that's some bullshit. Either way, we follow Valhalla character Basim through Baghdad 10 years before Valhalla took place, putting this game in 861 AD. It shows us his journey from street thief to master assassin. But before we get there, let's start more with the world of Baghdad. Just real quick and simple, it's pretty, and actual round city is pretty tight and fun to travel through. With a decent amount of color and atmosphere, it's way more populated than Valhalla's England, which is to be expected because Valhalla has a lot of empty open spaces, if you will. But it is nice, even if a lot blends in, which is to be expected with probably the limited resources the developers had. We know how Ubisoft is with giving their actual employees, good resources. But with, dealing with what they had, it worked well enough. I enjoyed the world of Baghdad. I haven't got to travel much of it. I mean, I've traveled through most of it, just not too much exploring. I mainly just ran around during the story, but from what I've seen, it worked well with the short time I had with it. It still doesn't compare to some of the greatest maps that we've had in the series, like Egypt or even Rome. But good for what they were going for. It didn't get boring, at least, for the most part. Now, as for the overall gameplay, it really is a mixed bag. Combat can be very stale. It works and sometimes feels good, but honestly, nothing ever felt better than the classic AC combat, even if that classic combat style was fairly easy once you learned it, especially in later titles like Revelations, where you're just mowing people down, or even in Black Flag or 3, which had a somewhat different style, but still, you were just mowing people down. I liked the way that felt. This one, though, I don't know. It feels like they just took little effort and made almost a demo version of what Origins combat was, because I think Origins still had a way more complex combat system than this game. I think Origins did it better, but most of the time you're supposed to avoid open combat anyway, so if you do it right, you won't even use it too much. Going down to free running, it's pretty solid. It's not as good as Brotherhood or as pretty as Unity, but it did flow most of the time, not really adding much to the formula, mainly taking stuff away. I think ever since when I went back on my second playthrough, I think they do have side and back ejects. I'd have to fact check that, but I thought I did it a couple times on accident even, because the first time we played it, it did not have side ejects and it was kind of shitty. But it did add one thing, pole vaults, which are cool, but the problem with that is it's far few in between. I mean, it did the job, the free running, which is all I can ask, especially since I feel Valhalla did a really shit job at that. Though, again, it was mostly because the map was just lacking in general. A lot of open fields, very small towns. It does the job better than that, Now, for stealth, I think since the original, it has gotten better, especially after we got the option of crouch in Unity, which added a little bit of variety. While I think Unity still did it the best, in terms of crouching and sneaking around, it still works well here. Nothing too crazy about it, but, it was good. Social stealth doesn't really matter here. It hasn't mattered in a long time, which is the thing that fans are mainly wanting. You can use it here, but it's easier not to. You don't really have to. I mean, it's not exactly a return to roots with stealth or a lot of this game, but it gets the job done, which is how I'm starting to feel about the game entirely. So gameplay overall, not horrible, lacking in combat and most other areas, but you know, it does work most of the time. It's not horrible, it's just not amazing. Now, kind of dipping somewhat back into the story with the characters, because this is going to be really quick, most of them are forgettable, which has been a theme, in my opinion, since Origins. While Basm is a decent character most of the time, I kind of liked him here more than in Valhalla. Everyone else is kind of just there. I barely remember them. Even our assassin companions, which is really a shame. I think even Valhalla had better side characters. I can't speak much on these characters as I can barely remember most of these characters' names. I know there was Roshan, I think that's her name, our master assassin, our mentor. Other than that, I really can't. And it's not even like a language barrier thing where they all have, you know, foreign names or Middle Eastern names. I just genuinely can't remember. Which, for me, it tells me that they failed in this department. Now, for the story, just going straight to it, it's pretty decent. And that's what I'm saying a lot about this game, but you can see where this was originally a DLC, but at least it was a good one, or a decent one. So, like I said earlier, we play as Basm, a street thief turned assassin, tasked with, for whatever reason, because he was still really fresh in the Brotherhood at the time, he's tasked with destroying the order that had taken residence in Baghdad, and just trying to figure out what they got going on. So Basm goes on this great journey, finding out about his true self, kinda, in the end. I guess spoilers for Mirage and technically Valhalla. You know, if you don't want to be spoiled, go away. But, so in the end of the game, there was one thing his friend Nala, I think her name was, I might be fucking that up, but whoever his best friend was in the game, wasn't actually real. Plot twist, it was all a dream. And then the Order, near the end of the game, tells him, you know, at least the leader, or whatever, says that he has a greater purpose, which of course we find out in Valhalla, he is low-key reincarnated. That's really all you need to gather from this story most of the time. It's just extra context is what this story feels like. The story is fun. Our missions and targets and some of the things we get to do are solid, but this still feels like it could have just stayed a DLC. I mean, the story for me, when I played it, at least took about 14 hours, maybe just over. If you honestly cut 4 hours off of that gameplay and squeezed out some of the targets we had, you have a $15 DLC and you can explain everything you wanted to explain. Because there's not a lot that needed to be there, mainly a few, targets. But instead, they added a few more hours, aka targets, and just a little extra-ish content and charged like 40 or 50 bucks for it, whatever it was, I forget. So it's kind of some bullshit. It's a good story, but if you're taking an idea from a DLC, then really run with it. Don't just water it down. Give it enough content to justify a bigger asking price. I like the story, but it's pretty low in my list of stories considering how many amazing stories we've had in the series so far. With the Ezio trilogy, Black Flag, the original Assassin's Creed, or even 3 had a pretty decent story. I'd need to go back to that game. A lot of people talk shit about it. I think it's not that bad. But that's for 3. Overall, for Mirage, it was good, but it left a lot to be desired. And that's kind of the problem with it, is that this game came out in 2023, and we had Valhalla in, 2020? So they had time to cook on it, but they didn't even decide. They were just doing DLC for Valhalla for like a hot minute, like a good year or two, and they decided that this DLC was good enough for its own title, when if it would have just started like that, and they actually had 3 years to cook it up, it would have been way different. Now, don't get me wrong, even when I say, it left a lot to be desired, personally, I was one of the fans who would complain when Ubisoft makes 100-hour-long games because it slogs. They can only hold the compelling story for maybe 30 hours. When I played Valhalla, I think at the point I lost interest in the story and I could tell they were just giving me extra shit to do to pad out the runtime, I was only at like 25 hours. So the rest usually is just some bullshit. Just go here, go there, fetch this, fetch that. Just stupid shit, meaningless shit. And if they gave it a little more time, for Mirage at least, and made this game like a 25, maybe 30-hour game, they could have added way more depth. Which is crazy because when they make a 100-hour game, it is a nightmare. When they make a 15-hour game, like Mirage, it leaves so much stuff to be desired. And I hate sounding like one of those fans who wanted a shorter and tighter experience, end up getting it, and still complaining. But I'm only complaining because I feel like for story-wise, we kind of got ripped off. I don't know. I don't hate this game by any means. Not like I've seen other fans hate this game. I actually like it well enough. I just wanted a little more, and I want a little more complexity, and I know that these developers and writers tell amazing stories. I've seen it. You know, even Valhalla had a good story. It was just hindered by bullshit. As much as I hate to say it, as much as I hate Odyssey, the story there is halfway decent, even though it doesn't make sense for Assassin's Creed. It's halfway decent, but it's held back by 100 hours worth of bullshit. That's the thing, is when they add side content. They're trying to be an RPG, if you will, like The Witcher. That's when they start fucking up. And then when they take all that away, especially considering this was just supposed to be a DLC, then it just feels like a half-assed story. The game looks good. It plays decent. The story has its high points, but overall, it's still just okay. I wouldn't necessarily call it mid like I did before, and I definitely won't skip it if I was running an AC marathon. I would even maybe pick it up again just for shits and giggles in the future. But this definitely doesn't breach my top 5. Overall, I'd say it's like well, to not put it too high, I almost said 8 for some reason. I think that's way too high. But going down just a peg, I think sounds right. I would give it a solid, well, it's not solid. I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. Maybe a 7. I don't know. I don't know what to do when I really think about it. Overall, I see what the developers were going for. I just wish that this idea started out as a mainline title and had a little more time to cook. Even though they technically had 3 years, they technically maybe only spent like a year and a half on it, maybe. It's just a little undercooked. But overall, definitely not the worst, game in the series. There's at least 3 titles that come to mind that beat it for the worst title in the series. But, all in all, I like it well enough. I'll leave it at 7.5, even if that's a little high. 7.5 out of 10. It's halfway decent. I'd play it again. I just wish there was more, which is kind of a good thing. I'd rather wish there was more than wish there was way less, like they have been, Ubisoft has been known to do. But this is just my opinion, and again, I'd like to know yours in the comments below. Where does this go on your ranking of the series? For me, I think it would be at like number 9, maybe 8 if I'm feeling frisky. I don't know. When the new Assassin's Creed Shadows game comes out, I will do a remastered video of my ranking series, but until then, let me know your list and rating in the comments below. Anyways, if you made it this far in the video, thank you. You're awesome. Be sure to share, like, and subscribe to see more of what I've done and what's to come. I'd love to have you, but anyways, thanks for coming, and thanks for watching.